All right, so welcome back. Today, 19 March 2026, six current affairs, ships stranded in Persian Gulf, UCC in Gujarat, a controversial transgender bill, ethanol beyond E20, the parliamentary guillotine, and the India's demographic future. Let's go. So, first of all, we have the Hormuz crisis. India's 22 ships stranded. Now, an escalating US Israel Iran conflict in the Persian Gulf has led Iran to largely restrict commercial shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. As of March 18, 2026, 22 Indian flagged vessels carrying 611 seafarers are stranded west of the strait. EAM Jaishankar has been conducting diplomatic engagement, and two Indian LPG carriers have successfully passed through. Now, India has over 600 nationals aboard ships that cannot move, creating both an energy security problem and a consumer welfare obligation. The Indian Coast Guard seized three Iranian tankers in February 2026 near Mumbai for allegedly manipulating AIS transponders and conducting illegal ship to ship oil transfers. Two Indian, two Indian LPG carriers have crossed the strait after diplomatic engagement, demonstrating India's multi alignment approach working in real time. Strait of Hormuz is the narrow sea passage through which 20% of global oil supply transits daily. Strategic choke point is the maritime passage where control can disrupt global trade. AIS transponder is basically the mandatory vessel tracking system. Indian Coast Guard is the paramilitary force guarding India's exclusive economic zone. Multi alignment is India's policy of independent engagement with all major powers, and energy security is ensuring reliable and affordable access to energy resources. Next, we have the Gujarat UCC Bill 2026 tabled. Now, the Gujarat government tabled the UCC Code Bill 2026 in the State Assembly on March 18, 2026, one day after the Justice Ranjana Prakash Desai committee submitted its final report to Chief Minister Bhupendra Patel. The bill mandates uniform conditions for marriage and requires registration of live in relationships across all religions. Now, Uttarakhand was the first state to enact a UCC in January 2024. Gujarat is now the second, creating state level precedents that should accelerate the national UCC debate. The bill requires live in couples to register their relationship with district authorities, a provision that critics argue violates the right to privacy under Article 21, as established in the Puttaswamy judgment. The five-member committee studied feasibility for over a year, recommending uniform marriage conditions, minimum age 21 for men and 18 for women, prohibition of prohibition on bigamy, and mandatory registration applicable to all communities. UCC is the common set of laws governing marriage, divorce, and inheritance of all citizens. Article 44 is the DPSP directing the state to secure a uniform civil code for citizens. DPSP is the directive principle of state policy, not justiciable but fundamental to governance. Personal law is the community specific family laws. Live in registration is the mandatory disclosure of live in relationships to government authority. Concurrent list is the subjects where both center and states can legislate, including personal law. Next, we have the Transgender Amendment Bill 2026 introduced. Now, the Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Amendment Bill 2026 was introduced in Lok Sabha on March 13, 2026 by Social Justice Minister Virendra Kumar. Now, it proposes to delete Section 4, Clause 2 of the 2019 Act, the right to self perceived gender identity, and replace it with a medical board certification route. Now, Section 4, Clause 2 of the Transgender Person Act 2019 allowed a person to identify as transgender based on their own self perception without any medical examination. Deleting this provision means the state no longer recognizes a person's fundamental right to know their own gender. The amendment requires a medical board, headed by a chief medical officer, to examine and recommend before the district magistrate issues a transgender certificate. The Nalsa versus Union of India 2014 Supreme Court judgment held that gender self identification is a fundamental right under Articles 14, 15, 19, and 21. The 2026 amendment directly contradicts this, making it constitutionally vulnerable and likely to face a Supreme Court challenge. So, NALSA versus UL, which is SC judgment, recognizing third gender and right to self identification. Self perceived identity is the right to identify one's gender without external certification. Section 4, Clause 2 is the provision in 2019 Act being deleted. Recognized self perceived identity. Medical board certification is the state requiring medical examination to validate gender identity. Article 21 is the right to personal liberty and dignity. Transgender Persons Act 2019 is India's first comprehensive law protecting transgender rights. Then we have the next news, which is E20 mandated, E27 and E30 roadmap unveiled. Now, the government has mandated that from April 1, 2026, all petrol sold in India must include up to 20% ethanol blending and meet a minimum RON 95 standard. Now, India's current blending has already crossed 18%. Simultaneously, BIS has begun developing E27 norms, and ARAI is studying engine compatibility for the next phase. Now, it is important because E20 converts an aspirational target into a legal obligation. Oil marketing companies like HPCL, BPCL, IOC must now blend 20% ethanol in their petrol. RON 95 is the European standard octane rating. Ethanol naturally raises octane number, so E20 improves fuel quality. Now, E27 is a stepping stone to E30. BIS, or the Bureau of Indian Standards, sets fuel standards. ARAI, or the Automotive Research Association of India, tests how existing engines handle higher blends. India already saves roughly about $3 billion annually at E20 by displacing crude imports. At E30, an additional 4 to 5 billion per year in forex savings is projected. Now, ethanol blending program is basically a government scheme mandating ethanol mixing in petrol. RON 95 is the research octane number 95 minimum fuel quality standard for E20 petrol. National Biofuel Policy 2018 is the policy framework setting 20% blending target by 2025-2026, and BIS is the Bureau of Indian Standards sets product quality and safety standards in India. Second generation ethanol is the ethanol produced from agricultural waste, not food crops. Fuel versus food trade off is the tension between using food crops for energy versus food security. Now, the next important news is the guillotine applied. 53 lakh crore passed. What this is about. Now, on March 18, 2026, Speaker Om Birla applied the guillotine in Lok Sabha, clubbing all remained undiscussed demand for grants and passing them by voice vote without debate. Now, the appropriation bill 2026-2027, worth over 53 lakh crore, was subsequently passed, authorizing the government expenditure for the year. Now, the guillotine is a parliamentary procedure where undiscussed ministry wise expenditure allocations are put to vote at a preset time, no matter how many remain. Only a handful of ministries typically get debated, the rest are guillotined. In 2026, most of the 53 lakh crore was approved this way. Now, under Article 114 of the Constitution, no money can be withdrawn from the Consolidated Fund of India without an Appropriation Act passed by the Parliament. The Appropriation Bill converts the budget allocations into a legal authorization for spending. Its passage completes the annual budget cycle. Now the Article 114 is the constitutional anchor. Parliament must pass the Appropriation Act before any government expenditure. If Parliament fails to pass it in time, Article 116 allows a vote on account, a temporary authorization for essential spending until the full act passes. Now, guillotine is the passing all undiscussed demands for grants or mass at a set time. Demand for grants is the ministry-wise expenditure proposals voted on by Parliament. Appropriation bill is the legislation that formally authorizes the withdrawal from the consolidated fund. Article 114 is the constitutional provision requiring appropriation act before any government spending. Cut motions is the motions by MPs to reduce demand for grants. And Consolidated Fund of India is the main government account into which all revenues are credited. Next, we have the India 2051, 1.5 billion people aging fast. Now, the Population Foundation of India released its report Unraveling India's Demographic Future, projecting India's population rising from 1.36 billion in 2021 to 1.59 billion by 2051, with the crude birth rate falling from 17 to 10.8 per 1000. Kerala will be the oldest state, Bihar the youngest. Now, India's population growth is decelerating sharply. The era of rapid growth is over. By 2051, Kerala will have the largest share of population aged 80 and above, comparable to European aging economies. Bihar remains the youngest state, with higher fertility and a larger working age cohort. The same country will have two completely different demographic realities. Southern states achieved sub replacement fertility earlier following government population policy. If Lok Sabha seats are redrawn post 2026 based on population, southern states stand to lose representation despite having controlled population. Total fertility rate is the average number of children per woman over her lifetime. Demographic dividend is the economic benefit when working age population exceeds dependence. Demographic transition is the shift from high birth death rates to low birth death rates. Population Foundation of India is the civil society body working on demographic research and health. Delimitation is the redrawing of Lok Sabha constituency boundaries based on population data, and the crude birth rate is the number of births per 1000 population per year. Now, six topics, six connections, six syllabus. The Hormuz crisis for the IR, the UCC and transgender bill for polity, ethanol for economy, guillotine for parliamentary procedure, and demographics. Right? So stay consistent, stay sharp. See you tomorrow. Thank you.